So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today we make a return to another map we have seen several times in the past. This is MIRLOND. I've mentioned in the past that MIRLOND hasn't necessarily been my favourite map historically because it does have a tendency to work out in a very similar fashion in most instances. However, the last battle we saw on it really did surprise me in a good way, and hopefully we get to see a little bit more of what this map has to offer, because this map can work out in different ways if you allow it to. It's a very big cityscape settlement, so that should go without saying. However, very often we see it turn into a very much a choke point fight contained around one particular section of the map. Hopefully that isn't the case this time, but the defenders really are the ones who dictate whether that is going to be the case or not. It may be one of the most effective ways to defend MIRLOND, but actually very rarely have we seen the defenders win by doing that, so it might be time for a little bit of a rethink, but we shall have to wait and see. Once again, it is a largely good versus evil siege, and once again it appears as though the dwarves, much in the theme of the recent episodic series, have fallen to the dark side, because they are going to be marching alongside the forces of evil, perhaps to try and get a bit of retribution, once again, unfortunately, on poor Mirkwood. So Thranduil very much seeing the ire of all these dwarves, as they currently occupy this settlement, and the forces of evil will try to take it away from them, no doubt. Also, the thing about the deployment zones on this map is half the city the attackers can deploy in immediately, so the defenders only have so much that they can work with. We shall see what they decide to try and do and how quickly they are able to do it. Nonetheless, we shall start off with the player who sent me this battle replay first and foremost, who is going to be the evil dwarves, and he is going to be Thanatos, and playing as Khazad. Khazad obviously an infantry powerhouse of a faction, very useful whether you're attacking in a siege or especially if you're defending, really, because of the extra defensive values that the dwarves have, but really it doesn't matter too much. Like, the infantry powerhouse that they represent is going to be very, very useful, especially when you consider that they're also going to be marching alongside Isengard and Umbar today, two other factions who have got their own strengths on foot as well. So it's going to be difficult for the defenders if they don't set their stall out properly. Warriors of Khazad, they may be basic as far as dwarven infantry goes, but that's still going to be better than what most other factions can field as with regards to a entry-level unit of line infantry. So they make for a pretty good first wave. Just in behind them, we have the surprisingly damaging Orc Hunters of Khazad, but in the same vein, they're also surprisingly fragile. They don't have a shield, their armour is decent, but in comparison to the rest of the Khazad roster, they don't have the shield also to make up for it like the Warriors of Khazad in front of them, but still they're damaging enough. It's a sort of unit that the defenders are going to have to be a little bit careful of, because if they allow them to continuously fire into their lines, it's going to be a problem, especially for the more lightly armoured elements of the Mirkwood army. Some upgraded 4th Legion shield guards. When you get into the Legion units of Khazad, obviously you have very, very dependable units indeed, especially with regards to their defensive values. 4th Legion shield guard are certainly no exception to that, because spears in general are a defensive unit when you're talking about a siege battle such as this anyway, because it's rare that you're going to see a huge amount of cavalry that they have to combat, although considering one of the defending factions today, they may have to. We'll have to wait and see. 2 units of spears out on either flank. Also some dwarven miners when you have a constrained budget to work with when you're on the attack. Sometimes when you're playing these really expensive factions like Khazad you do have to cut corners somewhere. The dwarven miners allow you to do that. They're unshielded, they'll be easy to kill for enemy archers, but by the same token, that's kind of what you expect. And if they do get into melee, that little bit of armour piercing they have can be a potential problem against the right kind of unit. Upgraded 3rd Legion infantry, they're going to be a little bit better at dealing damage when things get a little bit rough and ready inside the settlement, and obviously they're very, very tough to boot. One of those upper end units of line infantry. A couple of units of Hammers of Gundabad. That locked morale may very well serve them very well, because the attackers often have to throw themselves headlong into the fray, and even a faction like Khazad may struggle with morale if things start going against them, but that's not something that the Hammers of Gundabad have to worry about, and they'll be able to swing those mighty warhammers every step of the way to their inevitable destruction if that's the case. But it's going to be difficult to kill them off in that way anyway. Sons of the Fallen are a much more defensive unit of spearmen. Of course, they'll keep themselves alive for longer than the Hammers of Gundabad, but they won't offer the same level of extreme armour-piercing damage either, so that's the trade-off that you have. And finally, the 1 bodyguard unit they're bringing. Not too surprising to only see one of these, considering Khazad have a constrained budget today. The armour-piercing guards of Khazad, which is interesting. There are 2 human factions on the defence, which are a little bit more reliant on their armour than Mirkwood are, so perhaps it does make sense that the guards of Khazad have been brought over the Mithril Guard. Now this army here has extended its way a fair ways into the settlement, to be honest with you. We have DF Mark here, who's playing as Isengard, a very condensed army indeed. I mean, maybe his intent is to try and rush forward and occupy an area of the settlement to prevent the defenders from meeting up, but if he doesn't have the support of his allies to do so, he could end up getting utterly crushed between Mirkwood and the Dalian army that we see just down the hill over there. It's going to be a little bit difficult to differentiate his units, but of course he's got some Uruk-hai archers in there just for that basic skirmish. Uruk-hai infantry, completely unsurprising in a siege battle like this. They're a very solid, dependable unit of line infantry. Dunlendings for the same purpose as the Dwarven miners on the other side. You have to save money somewhere, and the Dunlending clansmen allow you to do that, so certainly for a very reasonable price as well. Orc factions will always allow you to do that to some extent. The mighty Nazkai should go without saying, really. When you know you're going to be going up against especially factions that do have some armour, the Nazkai represent such a threat to them that you have to bring them, really. Of course, there's also the Uruk-hai pikemen. We've seen them be very effective in the mod in this current version of the game. Berserkers don't have the same defensive abilities as the Nazkai, but they certainly have another hit point which helps keep them alive for longer, and they're relatively similar in terms of dealing damage with those large hooked swords that the Nazkai and Berserkers carry. Some raiders to pad out the numbers of the army as well, and that's pretty much it. There's some crossbowmen in there as well, which again, when you're playing as Isengard, should really go without saying, because if you can get them into a good position when you're on the attack, it makes life very difficult for the defenders. This is a bit of a weird deployment zone that the Umbar army of Leon has to deal with over here, because you get only this little spit of land to work with, which is a little bit unfortunate for them perhaps, but it does mean that Isengard have maybe overextended, so it does offer a little bit of spice to this fight right from the off. Much like the Isengard army though, more though as a result of the deployment zone he has been given, it's a little bit difficult to differentiate his army units here. Naruna Aru Sentinels and Royal Guard are in there, pikes and very heavy archers, Castamir's Rangers. That body-piercing ammunition will be a real danger to the defenders if they can't deal with it by some means. Balakith Axe Guard, so plenty of armour piercing on display for all the attacking armies, which will be a problem for any army that is not Mirkwood on the field, potentially. Even Mirkwood, if they've gone really heavily into their heavier units, it could be an issue. Belagair Archers for that skirmish. There's some Corsairs in there as well, just some basic Corsair infantry. Some Corsair crossbows, Alcarondas Legion, which you want to bring them for a similar sort of reason as you want to bring Uruk-hai infantry and 3rd Legion infantry. Very, very dependable unit of upper end line infantry. And yeah, pretty much run-of-the-mill as you'd expect from Umbar, given a slightly lower budget. They've still gone in for that quality infantry, augmented by a few Corsairs as well. Pretty small army though, which could work in the defenders' favour. And finally, another faction which we've seen a lot of lately has been Rhun, played by Jefferson. Got some crossbowmen once again, so plenty of crossbows for the attackers today, which may very well prove to be a problem for the defenders. They can't possibly deal with all of them, can they? We'll have to wait and see. Javelins from the Balkoth Tribesmen, archers from the Loknal Rim. They've also got the truly devastating Dragon's Wrath crossbow, which as far as a single unit goes, is probably the most devastating you'll see on the field today. I didn't see the Iron Watch of Miramir for Khazad, but they would have potentially something to say about that. Eastron Warriors and Clansmen for the basic units. Probably Cummels, no Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen, and Shadow Guard, but not Shadow Bows, which is kind of interesting. Scion Rim, Flag Rim, and Cummels chosen for that solid centre for the Runic advance. Just a quick glance over here once more. No, that's 3rd Legion Infantry, so no Iron Watch of Miramir, just to be certain of that. Now, moving on to the defenders, we have Bacon Soup playing as Dale, once again having to take up arms against their former Dwarven allies. Dalian Bowmen have set up some stakes. I mean, they could get some decent shots on the dwarves as they advance, but how effective are they going to be? And the Orc Hunters can just return fire anyway. It'd be a little bit more understandable if it were Erebor, because Erebor have to get a bit closer with those crossbows, but I don't know. We'll see how Khazad decide to deal with that one unit of archers. Several units of Lake Town pikemen. Interesting to see Dale go for so many entry-level units here, considering they're going to have a little bit more budget to play with. But then again, it is the only unit of dedicated pikes that Dale have, and they can be so useful in a defence like this. So while they are basic as far as pikemen go, they could still prove to be very, very useful, especially given Mirkwood's complete lack of phalanx units. It's unsurprising, therefore, to see that he's also gone pretty heavy in for the Barding Herd. They're halberdiers, but they're significantly higher tier halberdiers relative to their peers than the Lake Town pikemen are to the other pikes. Blackshot Dragon Slayers, armour-piercing bowmen will be really good at dealing with, particularly the elites from factions like Umbar and Khazad. We shall see if that is what they want to do. Dalian Royal Guard, some Bardian Marks without the armour upgrade, but they don't necessarily need it in this kind of fight. Dale are going to have superior terrain anyway. When you combine them with the damage that Mirkwood can do, the defenders, if they use their ammunition well, that could be one of their saving graces. Several units of Lake Town infantry as well, very similar to the Corsair infantry we saw elsewhere, so that's plenty more ammunition. They also double as light infantry in melee. There's also some gaps here. I would be really surprised not to see the Athala Rangers be a part of the Dalian army, as is the same with the Keldon River Patrol. So think it's fairly safe to assume that they may very well be in and amongst things as well. Then we have Team Darkstar, who is playing as Mirkwood. He's got some Spears of Amenduir, the mighty Elven King's Palace Guard, albeit without the armour upgrade today. Hiriauth are over here, some Hiri Lang, one unit of which does not have the armour upgrade, the other one does. Hiriauth do have the armour upgrade, so they're going to be the bulwark on the front line for the elves, as of course are the Hiriek. Very nice defensive spears, but as they are elves, they are quite capable of dealing damage as well. Hiri Peng, not going to be too surprising to see Mirkwood go heavily in for quite a few archers, some woodland protectors over here, some javelins. Considering Mirkwood are on the red team, we're probably not going to see a fair amount of their army because they are a faction which has got access to a fair amount of units that can hide anywhere. Greenwood Rangers, Greenwood Watchers potentially, that sort of thing. Wardens of Amon Lank even. Upper end unit, heavier unit by Mirkwood standards as well. Excuse me. My voice giving up already, that's not a good sign. But then we move on to the final army. It's been a little while actually since we saw Dol Amroth played here by Diego Rio Ramos. Oh man, excuse me. Arathirum of Dol Amroth. Now I'm a little bit perhaps surprised in a way to see there's only one unit of Dol Amroth cavalry. Even more surprised to see it's right at the back of the settlement over here. I mean, saving it until the late game is a viable strategy for cavalry like this, but it's only viable if you believe that you're going to have the upper hand, or at least be level pegging with the attackers going into the late game. Now it is a 4v3, not a 5v3, so the odds aren't stacked against them in the way they could be, especially given the initial deployments, but I don't know. We'll see how he uses the Arathirum. They could be a match winner, or they could be useless. They've let me down before in the past, I can certainly tell you that. Belfast Marines, basic javelins, but ranged units like this, especially with armor-piercing damage, are always going to be useful if you use them wisely. Tirithea Marksmen, yet more ranged pressure, which is going to be difficult for the attackers to dislodge because of how defensively savvy they are. That's probably Nimrodel Rangers if I had to guess. I would certainly recommend bringing the Nimrodel Rangers in this sort of situation. Athalon Halberdiers are not too dissimilar to the Barding Herd. I think the Barding Herd is slightly bulkier and they do have a bit of a shield value to them as well. But the Athalon Halberdiers will offer something very similar with regards to their pure melee stats. Some upgraded Athalon men-at-arms to help hold the line. They're nothing too special as far as line infantry goes, even though they look fairly impressive when they've got their armour upgrades. But they'll hold the line for you, and they've got a nice shield value as well. Tarnostian Spearmen. Got some Perithil Champions over here as well, which of course Dol Amroth are very good with their heavy swordsmen. Fear-causing unit as well, so that could be the sort of thing, although among the attackers, Rhun and Isengard may be more likely to rout than Umbar and Khazad Dum, but even Rhun and Isengard, as far as evil men and orcs go, are a little bit more likely to hold their nerve, so we'll wait and see. The armour piercing of the Black Swan Renegades, and then plenty of elite infantry here as well, going for that quality. Some dismounted Knights of Silver Swan, 2 units of them, and then obviously the very impressive Haven Guard is where Imrahil is going to be hanging out today. So, that is going to be the armies. I don't know what sort of cut we're going to be making. It kind of depends on what Isengard do, or what the etiquette rules at the start of this battle are going to be, but I'll rejoin when the battle is about to get underway. Well, perhaps I was hoping for a little bit too much from 2 battles on Merlond in succession, where people would not settle into exactly the same defensive positions we've seen previously. Initially, it did actually look like Mirkwood were going to be a little bit more aggressive down here along the avenue that Rhun were going to take, but I see that that was merely a red herring, and instead we are going to be seeing one of the usual kinds of sieges that we see on Merlond, although hopefully as the battle goes along we will get to see a little bit more of the map used than just this central area a little bit past the river. But regardless of that, the Uruk-hai are in position. Uruk-hai archers being given a little bit of cover by the Uruk-hai raiders. I mean, the Uruk-hai archers do need to start thinking about firing back into the ranks of Mirkwood. Otherwise, things aren't going to end so well for them. Interestingly enough, the bows have gone silent over here. I would certainly continue to shoot into them with at least Lake Town infantry. But the Hiri Peng will take up the mantle anyway. You don't really have too much of a choice in this kind of situation when the attackers are intent on trying to skirmish you down. There is simply no other way other than to try and whittle them down. Dale have got some Dalian bowmen over here as well as some Spears of Amond. We are at least protecting them from a super fast assault. Some Corsair infantry from Umbar across the way as well. Rhun ready to advance forward, kind of. Again, a little bit weird that Rhun advanced forward and then pulled their army right back to outside the settlement again. It was kind of bizarre to see in the skipped moments of the battle, but regardless, it is what it is. The cavalry now moving forward from Dol Amroth. Once again, we get to see the Arathirum in action. 2 battles in a row where we see the Arathirum after months and months of almost forgetting about their entire existence. Many people, if they do want to bring a unit of cavalry, really high-end cavalry with Dol Amroth, they'll go with the tankier Haven Knights. The Arathirium are better off the charge, which in this sort of situation is perhaps a little bit more useful. Uruk-hai Raiders pulling back, Uruk-hai Pikemen going to block any sort of attempt that the Arathirium may have of charging in, although maybe it could be an opportunity to get outside the settlements and start charging into the dwarves. I mean, a good charge into a lot of this dwarven infantry is going to yield a lot in the way of value. It's not a huge amount of anti-cavalry either from the dwarves. I mean, yes, there's Sons of the Fallen in here, and there's a few spears, but they are a little bit stretched. I mean, this is still the transitional phase, I suppose, for Khazad. No need to be overtly organised, but with the possibility of getting charged by the Arathirium, that would put me on my toes, most certainly. I'm also a little bit surprised to not see any Dalian archers on this bit of terrain here, because you could shoot quite easily into the flag rim. Maybe the clansmen, I mean, Gamprin are also somewhat exposed. That would be the ideal target, of course. I mean, if you can shoot into the flag rim from the front, their armour and shields are good enough to the point where they're going to absorb a decent amount of that damage, but it would at least force Rhun into moving their army maybe a little bit closer or retreating them again and potentially getting in the way of a unified assault from the attackers, which as we've seen time and time again can be a bit of an issue. Now, the Uruk-hai archers and raiders repositioning themselves. Interesting to see if the Arathirium do try to charge back out here again. The game of cat and mouse begins. Isengard, after all, won't want to bring their pikes out here to guard them, because they would immediately become the target of any elven arrow fire that they may perceive. Shooting in again. I mean, not a huge amount of damage being done here. Lake Town infantry, not the heaviest armour. They are technically shielded, but not using any of their rather limited ammunition supply at the moment, perhaps waiting for a better opportunity to do that with. In Isengard and Khazad, that's going to be a good amount of infantry strength that's coming through this way, really solid infantry as well. The other side, looking like it's going to be Umbar Rhun. Again, very good heavy infantry, good mix of heavy infantry factions this from the attacks, and then Rhun also with that extra bit of armour piercing. Arathirium retreating once again. The 4th Legion Shield Guard are in close proximity now as well, so the opportunities for these Dol Amroth Knights are going to be somewhat limited. Still not really anything happening over here. You can see that the Dalian marksmen have shot into some Corsair infantry across the way, but that just led to Umbar retreating again. The Dalian bowmen, especially when they've got that sort of terrain advantage, are always going to be the superior option there. Meanwhile, it's almost like the elves heard me, and they are now in position, ready to fire. Firing into the flag rim as they advance forward. I mean, elven arrow fire like this is strong enough to the point where the flag rim really won't enjoy this treatment. I'm a little bit confused as to why Rhun have decided to. So for those of you, well, all of you didn't see, but they advanced up here early on in the fight, and then they retreated back to their original starting position, and now they're going around this way. Maybe to try and take advantage of the cover that's over here rather than the open ground that's over there, as the elves shoot into the runic units as they move forward. Maybe that's it, but I mean, the advantages you gain from doing that are so limited, it's hardly worth the time that you spend doing such a thing. Irregardless, now we've got the dwarves on the front line, heavier armour. They'll make for perhaps a better screen for the Uruk-hai archers than the Uruk-hai raiders will, and of course they have the added bonus of naturally warding off the cavalry, where the Uruk-hai raiders most certainly would not have. Elves pulling back, still Bacon Soup and his Dalian archers sitting on the front line. Elsewhere, Balagai footmen maybe moving up there. Maybe Umbar will try and join the dwarves and Isengard in their assault forward. I mean, they can't afford really to let Rhun try and take this position all on their lonesome, because they will inevitably fail, and then it will become a one choke point fight, which is both not particularly fun to commentate on, and also certainly not what you want to be doing as attackers. You don't want to make the battlefield as narrow as that. You will perish at the hands of the quality that defenders can have, especially when there are elven defenders to concern themselves with. Uruk-hai raiders standing out front, maybe in an attempt to draw the Arathirium forward. I mean, they're going to draw the Woodland Realm Axemen forward, who have taken a couple of volleys by the looks of things from the Uruk-hai archers, but they will charge forward pretty quickly, and Woodland Realm Axemen like this are going to be very, very good at dealing with Uruk-hai raiders. It's exactly the kind of unit they will be good at dealing with. The slight downside to it is if the Dwarven player is awake and notices this, the heavy armour of those dwarves will be a little bit too much for the rather lightweight Woodland Realm Axemen to deal with. The Uruk-hai archers are trying to shoot in, and that is another way in which this unit is particularly vulnerable. Very good at mopping up light infantry and melee, more numerous orcish infantry, but as soon as they're exposed by arrow fire or genuinely heavy infantry, they're going to struggle a little bit more, and you can tell purely from the fact that they are melting away pretty quickly as a result of the arrow fire. And as soon as their manpower starts to abandon them, even the Uruk-hai raiders will start to get a handle on things in melee as well. Belegar archers moving forward, a little bit more intent from the attackers now. This is definitely a slow burn of a battle so far. Intending on skirmishing, only committing small amounts of units early on from both sides. Again, it's not necessarily the worst thing you can do, but it also means that we're going to have to wait a little bit longer in this fight before we see someone genuinely start to make gains in this fight. I mean, this unit of Woodland Realm Axemen is a loss for the defenders. This is something that the attackers will be all too happy for. Woodland Realm Axemen now starting to bite back against the raiders again, even though they're half strength really at this point compared to the Uruk-hai raiders. Without the arrow support, you can see the superiority that elven damage is offering them in melee. Still a little bit surprised we're not seeing these Dalian archers start to do the business either. Also seeing Mirkwood move forward over here as well. Woodland Realm Axemen revealing themselves, so, you know, being a little bit more aggressive than under normal circumstances, so maybe my my worrying was for naught. Dalian bowmen over here, a combination of Gamprim and Eastron clansmen. I mean, the Gamprim are the saving grace of this front line, because it will mean that they're going to be keeping the rather dangerous elven axemen at arm's length to a certain extent. There's one unit of spears of Amenduia as well. Any more runic units? I mean, this is the only force from Rhun they have here. I mean, if these unit of Dalian bowmen start shooting into the backs of that runic force, it's going to be pretty grisly for them. Gamprim will then not be the bulwark on the front line that Rhun needs them to be to keep those elves away from them, but so far Bacon Soup dawdling a little bit, and that is going to allow Rhun to get into position as well. They could fire some crossbow bolts into the Dalian bowmen up here. Hiri Peng continuing to fire, and I think they are going after the Eastron crossbowmen actually, but they're having to bank their shots fairly substantially. A nice volley into the back there. I can see the Arathirim charging forward. Are they actually going to be able to get a charge off? Not really. I think they got caught up a little bit on their own unit there, because the unit split almost in two. Dunlending clansmen acting as the screen. Of course, that better anti-cavalry bonus, very cheap unit that you don't mind losing to a charge either. So pretty much the best of all worlds to send forward as the first unit to prevent any sort of Arathirim counter-charging. Are those clear projectiles? No, Blackshot Dragon Slayers are over there. No, they are Greenwood Rangers. That's a little bit of a waste from the Mirkwood player. You need to be using your Rangers when the enemy blob up a little bit more, as we still have the Ranger mechanic of body piercing arrow fire. At some point they will lose that, but that will have to come with the next patch, of course. Eastron Warriors move forward. Just a few volleys from the Dalian bowman has been enough to already do crippling damage to this front line, really. Eastron Warriors are now moving forward. Eastron Crossbowmen getting in support. I mean, there's also a unit of Flag Rim on the front line, so this so far hasn't really gone to code for Rhun. Nasty defensive position to deal with those archers. Eastron Crossbowmen are reloading, but only portions of the unit are. Are they trying to shoot the Dalian Bowman? I mean, at this point they probably kind of need to. They are, but only a section of the unit is engaging with this. Now the full unit is listening to orders. Valakith Marksman from Lyon. Still plenty of units up around the corner there. Gamprim defeat seems certain. Wanderers of Nimrodale getting in position again. You don't really need rangers at this early stage. I'd be a little bit worried if the defenders intend on dumping a lot of their resources this early on, when the attackers still have plenty of numbers left at their disposal, and they can withstand this kind of punishment just fine. Unit of fairly damaged Lake Town infantry forming the front line. Wardens of Amon Lank revealing themselves and immediately getting a volley from the archers in behind. I mean, the Dunlending clansmen are not particularly great in melee. You would actually back the Lake Town infantry if they weren't already slightly wounded from the battles that have already occurred. And the problem's going to be there's a few Uruk-hai raiders intermingled in there as well. Through sheer numbers, the Lake Town infantry are almost certainly not going to win that fight, but we will keep an eye on it nonetheless. Over yonder, Tarnostian Spearmen, a little bit surprised to see the attackers not making moves to try and surround this Mirkwood position. It's old Amroth coming forward to back them up as well. Perithil Champions is definitely a good quality unit there. Dale seem really reluctant to counter-skirmish the enemy. Every time we've seen their archers so far, we have seen them used, but we haven't seen them really go toe-to-toe with an arch unit. Maybe that Corsair infantry across the bridge was the only example of such a thing. Well, the Gamprin being dealt with, the Woodland Realm Axemen chasing off the skirmishers now. More infantry is going to be needed on the front line from Rhun. And the Valakith Marksmen firing up the hill as well. I presume shooting the Hiri Peng. Archers that go long will still actually be hitting some of the defenders. Actually, a Thalon Halberdiers as well, so that's a happy little accident for the attackers. Meanwhile, over here, they are now doing this. Leon moving his Umbar units this way. Woodland Realm Axemen, still 79 of them remain, and they will be pretty good at dealing with the Balagai footmen. As much as they are tankier than stuff like the Uruk-hai raiders, they still won't be the sort of thing which is going to be all that pleased about being in melee with Woodland Realm Axemen. Fairly healthy unit of Uruk-hai raiders, but also Tarnostian spearmen. The defenders need to be a little bit careful because they could be swamped here. This is a very tight formation considering there's quite a lot of surface area to cover. Hopefully my voice maintains itself throughout this fight. Uruk-hai raiders and Balagai archers getting in a position to perhaps offer ranged support. That unit of Woodland Realm Axemen over there being finished off by a unit of Scion Rim, so as much as I appreciate this aggression, it's maybe not coming in the kind of numbers that would make it genuinely effective for the defenders. Uruk-hai archers firing some shots across. The Corsair infantry will do the same. Then over here on this front line, again, Lake Town infantry is a little bit passive from Dale, you'd have to say, leaving their units in place, electing not to counter-skirmish, electing not to commit reinforcements. It is all rather odd. I mean, Warriors of Khazad easily going to be a unit of better line infantry than the men of Lake Town, but what sort of units do they have back here? We've still got the Arathurim, still at full strength. Plenty of Bardian marksmen, plenty of other Lake Town units as well, so the numerous phalanx units that Dale have at their disposal in this fight is still there. Tarnostian spearmen, very similar actually to the Balagai footmen they're facing off against, but it's going to be this. The support is going to be the thing which cripples them here. Corsair infantry shooting into the side of this particular front line. Shields of the Tarnostian spearmen not coming into effect either. Not the most damaging unit of archers in the world, but they don't necessarily need to be, given the situation. Will we actually see them charge in here? We will. Lances come down, and that's going to do a ton of damage to the Dunlendings. Again, they do have that better anti-cavalry bonus. I'm actually a little bit surprised they did not rout there. But a decent little charge. We do need to continue to wear the enemy down and do as much damage as you can to the attackers to try and make their manpower desert themselves. Again, Diego Rio Ramos, this is a little bit overtly gung-ho, you would think. I mean, the Perithil Champions coming here to try and take away the support of the units. It's already too late for that front line, though. They're already going to end up losing regardless of what you do over here. And now you're going to end up losing a unit of Perithil Champions as well, which could have been very, very useful. You may end up killing this entire unit of Corsair infantry, but it's not a worthwhile trade. You need to end up killing at least, I'd say, 3 units of low-end archers to make the loss of this unit of heavy swordsmen worthwhile, and that's not going to happen. They do cause fear, I suppose, so you may end up routing some units that you're doing significant damage to, but even here they're moving forward and they're still taking arrow fire from nearby. Most unfortunate for them. At least they are still fighting on this front line, I suppose. Also now the additional problem of Rhun coming in to attack from the rear is also there. It is interesting over here, however, the attackers. They haven't been attacking in this area at the same time. If they had been, then the defenders probably already would have been vanquished, but they've been given a bit of a reprieve by the fact that the attackers are not necessarily on the same wavelength as one another just yet. Warriors of Khazad getting cycle charged into oblivion by the Aratha, and they have lost a rider at this point, but they're doing a significant amount of damage to the attackers as they move forward. I think that will probably be the last charge they're able to get in. It wasn't a particularly great one. They lost another rider, but with the close proximity now of the Dwarven Spears, they're probably not going to be attempting such things again. Bardian Marksman shooting in. Dale making a concerted effort to bring down units that are vulnerable to arrow fire, like pikemen. The Uruk-hai armour will protect them to a certain extent, but it's still not ideal for them. Dale do need to actually protect these Bardian Marksmen in melee with some sort of infantry. And again, it's a little bit weird. The Dwarves have the opportunity to close this unit of Bardian Marksmen down and engage them in melee, and they're deciding not to take it, so it is a little bit of a bizarre fight so far. Allowing the Uruk-hai to continue to take arrow fire when you could stop it. Parathil champions, at least they're now not surrounded, but Belagai footmen are genuinely an infantry unit, so they'll do a little bit better against them than the units of light archers they were massacring beforehand. Rhun are now moving forward. Dalian bowmen still not positioning themselves. Balaketh marksmen, decent unit of makeshift infantry. I mean, the Parathil champions are being allowed to be far more efficient over here than they had any right to be. Again, that has more to do with the fact the attackers are not, or were not, fighting in conjunction with one another, so now it's just a purely Umbar effort to try and finish this unit of swords off. There are still some elves, or well, one elf left alive. Surely not going to last much longer. And still alive? This pirate is making harder work of that than was necessary, but in the end he does succeed. Horse infantry there. Meanwhile, Hiri Pang in a pretty good position. Mirkwood so far has been the one most willing to utilise their ammunition, for good and ill, I think, on this occasion. It will push the attackers into moving forward a little bit more aggressively than they have done thus far. Meanwhile, they do now engage with the Bardian Marks, and once again Dale refusing to move his skirmishers even though they're in immediate danger of getting attacked in melee. I mean, this is still not great for the attackers either, though, because Warriors of Khazad, the Bardian Marksmen, while they won't be victorious against such unit melee, they can at least hold their own. The real problem comes from the Bardian Herd, that armour-piercing phalanx. Not the sort of thing that the basic Dwarven infantry is going to enjoy facing, or any Dwarven infantry really, but at least some would be able to outright defeat them. Uruk-hai infantry, for the same reasons, they're actually going to be better than the Warriors of Khazad, but the same problems apply. That is Dalian Raw Guard firing in, Dalian Bowmen that are out of ammunition now being committed to melee just to help shore things up, extra numbers on the front line. And also the Lake Town Pikemen trudging their way into position, another phalanx unit to try and keep the enemy at arm's length. The Dwarven Spears now add themselves to the mix. Bardian Marksmen now trying to retreat off the front line. They presumably still have ammunition, so they absolutely should be using all their ammo before they perish. Very often the problem we see with archers and the defenders is that they use their ammunition too quickly on targets that are unworthy. Rarely is the problem that they elect not to use their ammunition at all. The Hiri Pang pulling out their swords, coming to the aid of the Dalian Bowmen, which is necessary given the pressure from the 4th Legion and the Uruk-hai infantry that is making itself apparent now. There is also gaps around the phalanx which maybe could be utilised. Snaga skirmishers meanwhile getting a real beating at the hands of the Bardian Marksmen in behind these front lines. Are they moving up this way? Not quite yet. Spears of Emondui are ready to defend. Once again, archers largely are things that are on the front line. Corsair infantry trying to do a bit of damage. I mean, the Hiri Alth are pointing the wrong way, which means while their armour upgrade will still be coming into effect, their shields will not. So that's a little bit of a strange one. So far though, it's still only the one fight going on, and even though there is a lot of units involved, it's still not an all-out offensive from the attackers, that you'd have to say. Dwarven miners adding themselves to the front line. I mean, they're just going to be held at arm's length by all of those pikes and halberds. More numbers are all well and good, but only if you have the momentum to start buckling this front line. The Thalon men at arms, so Dole Amroth, potentially going to get involved with the unit of line infantry as well. The armour is all well and good, but they're not quite the same level of damage dealing that the Uruk-hai infantry can get up to. There are plenty of Uruk-hai on their way forward now, including more pikes. More dwarven spears as well, so this attack is going to keep going for a little while yet, unless the defenders really want to pour a bunch of damage in. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers could provide that. One of the units of Rangers could provide that if they so chose as well. Speaking of which, that is a unit of Rangers, is it not? Yes, the Athala Rangers are firing in, and that's a good opportunity to do so. There's a good amount of Uruk-hai and Dwarves on that front line, and it will do a lot of damage, especially when they're shooting into their backs as well, so the shields, which do mitigate the damage somewhat, won't even be coming into effect, and I imagine this is going to end up going pretty poorly for the attackers overall. This section of the front line over here not being subjected to the Ranger fire, but there are some elves in melee, and through sheer numbers I think for the time being the defenders are going to be okay. Dwarven miners switching their positioning. There are archers from the low ground over there, Balakith marksmen, so projectiles flying all over the place. It's just going to be a matter of who utilises them best. It's much more important for the defenders, of course, to do that. Uruk-hai raiders and archers moving forwards. Spears of Amenduia on the way down, going to engage with what remains of the Balagai, and also Dalian bowmen opening up on the Eastron crossbowmen, trying to finish them off. I mean, there's not that many of them left, to be honest with you, but if you can finish off a unit of crossbows fully, I should say, and that's valuable crossbow bolts that the attackers will no longer have access to, so it's definitely worthwhile. Surely, though, this is going to be another sacrificial move from the defenders, as I don't think these Spears of Amenduia are going to survive past this particular fight. Orc hunters here on the low ground, alongside those Balakith, trying to shoot up and over. I mean, at this point, this attack is looking like it might fall apart. Uruk-hai raiders running away, Uruk-hai archers are shaken. The Uruk-hai pikes are also looking like they might run. The Dwarven miners do. 4th Legion Shield Guard doing their best, but Woodland Protectors firing their javelins in is surely going to be enough to cause this front line to completely collapse now. The Uruk-hai continue to fight, but again, the presence of that Barding Herd, such a dependable frontline combatant for Dale. Very sturdy. The armour-piercing phalanx is always going to be useful against this kind of opposition. Spears are trying to bulldoze their way into the formation. They've somewhat succeeded as well, but there's only going to be so much they're going to be able to do there, surely. Eerie Pang are out of ammunition, being committed to the fight to add a little bit of elven quality to try and put a stop to all of that. Uruk-hai infantry, healthier units of them on the way forward. I mean, it is a 4v3, I suppose, not a 5v3, so the attackers don't have quite the same margin for error as they otherwise would have. Dalian Royal Guard banking their shots, hitting the Uruk-hai infantry that are over there. Tirithea marksmen firing into the Loke flag room. And once again we're seeing the Dalian bowmen unflinchingly stand in position while the enemy move to engage them. It's one of the most unorthodox skirmishing performances I've ever seen from Baking Soup. Wouldn't recommend it under normal circumstances, but I suppose the attackers haven't actually managed to take advantage of it in a sweeping manner just yet. Balakith marksmen and flag room being engaged by the Hiri Al. I mean, together through sheer numbers, the Mirkwood Elves may be in a little bit of trouble here. That arrow fire is going to be pretty critical to their success. Armor piercing will be slightly more useful actually against the elves, with the surely the Wanderers of Nimrodal are not going to engage in melee as well. Here we are here, a little bit of a weird situation where their retreat is being interrupted by Dole Amroth. It's been a very, I don't know if clumsy is the right word, but maybe it is, a clumsy fight from pretty much everyone involved so far. Very bizarre. Blackguards firing in, I mean they may as well, there's a decent blob of Dole Amroth infantry here that you may as well try and whittle down. Now as they move forward. Fight continues over here. Warriors of Khazad, Uruk-hai berserkers getting involved in this business now. They all look pretty bloodied already. I mean, it is a bit of a meat grinder after all, but they're not dying just yet, which is critical. That 3 HP really helping them out. And of course in melee, they are going to rip a Thalon man-at-arms limb from limb. Lots of good damage there, but they will fizzle out fairly quickly, especially under close range arrow fire, providing that is what these Bardian marksmen are going after, and indeed it is. Will those Thalon man-at-arms actually last long enough for these Bardian marksmen to do the damage they require? I think the dwarves are trying to get around the defensive position to interrupt Bacon Soup's skirmishers. Woodland Protectors now getting into melee, and this part of the front line is still holding up perfectly well. I mean, the sheer amount of phalanx units is making it very difficult for the attackers to make any sort of headway. That over there was more from the Dalian Royal Guard. Here come the Warriors of Khazad. They are going to take a kind of a charge, but several of the Bardian marksmen do get in the way of it, but the charge still somewhat connects. Plenty of good damage being done there. Arrows also connecting with the Warriors of Khazad. They may very well rout pretty fast as a result. Dalian Royal Guard continuing to fire in. Oof, and now they're fully exposed, so yeah, the Arathurim lancing through the Warriors of Khazad. They need to be a little bit careful not to carry that charge through too much, otherwise they will end up decorating the end of those berserker weapons. Hiri Lang now moving forward as well. Those elven heavy swordsmen, the genuine article of heavy swordsmen rather than just archers that are out of ammunition, are a very different proposition to what they've been fighting already. And their skill at arms is going to be a bit of a problem even for something as solid as the Uruk-hai infantry. I'm not entirely sure what the Hiri Lang are doing at this point. They're just sort of munching through that front line. Arathurim don't have clear charges at this point, but so far the Arathurim have been somewhat useful. Going to need a little bit more in terms of kills if they're going to be truly good value. Speaking of good value, this is really good use of the Dragon's Wrath Guildsman. That blob of Dol Amroth units that were moved forward are ultimately going to be completely in vain from Diego Rio Ramos. It's unfortunate for him. Balakith marksmen completely surrounding them, so there is no escape. They will be pinned in place until all of the ammunition from the chanting Dragon's Wrath Guildsman has been utilised. I mean, I suppose the Arathurim have moved their way over here now, and they are going to get a nice downhill charge into the Balakith marksmen. So they are racking up this value pretty quickly. That much can't be denied. It might be enough as well, because from the front, with the Athalon Halberdiers, they are actually doing quite well in the melee engagement. It's the range support and the fact they're surrounded that may end up being the problem here for the Dol Amroth units. That wasn't as good of a charge. Only 2 Balakith marksmen end up falling there. Need to get a little bit more of a run up before the charge will connect. Guildsmen do retreat. Are they making any progress over here? Not really there. They're moving over here. They are overwhelming to a certain extent the Hiri Lang. It's not the best formation from them. More units coming in from the side. The unit of unupgraded Hiri Lang as well. Dwarven miners making up this section of the line is not going to go all that well for them. Woodland Protectors in there as well. Large chopping motions from the Varding herd. More elven javelins being utilised, primarily hitting warriors of Khazad there. They're going to hit enemies regardless of where they land in that particular blob, so definitely worthwhile. Bardian marksmen look like they're out of ammunition because I can see their swords are drawn. It's another unit they can use as makeshift infantry. Tirithea marksmen getting counter-skirmished a little bit by the Balagyr archers down on the low ground. They are going after, I think, the tribesmen. Dragon's Wrath crossbow is something else which the defenders should be worried about. They've lasted a little bit longer than they had any right to, this little pocket of Dol Amroth resistance, but I do not believe they're going to last all that much longer, unfortunately for them. Surely they're not going to commit forward an individual unit of Dalian bowmen. That's okay, they're not, because that would not be enough to save the situation. Still have a lot of reinforcements up here. A lot of it is rather basic though when you take a closer look. Thalon men-at-arms, Lake Town units, Cessa's Barding herd. There's also some Black Swan renegades and some elven infantry as well, but it's not exactly like an overwhelmingly high quality force that they have ready to face the enemy over there, which may yet end up being their downfall. Dalian Royal Guard still have ammunition, so their ammunition has lasted for a decently long time. More Uruk-hai pikemen being sent in, but still this almost entirely Dalian built phalanx section of the formation has stood very, very strong in this fight so far. The armour piercing giving them the ability to deal damage to stuff like the 4th Legion, the Lake Town pikemen just ensuring they stay just a little bit further away on average. And then over here where things are a little bit more up close and personal, the elves giving the dwarves the business. With their spinning kicks. Dalian Royal Guard now out of ammunition, drawing their swords, and they are a very accomplished melee fighter as well. That's going to be enough to get this section of the dwarven line to rout. Forward go the elves and the dwarves. I mean, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are getting into position now. They're already a little bit bloodied, and they're getting far too close to the enemy lines, already being engaged by the elves. And if you can catch them, you absolutely do want to. They're already taking a lot of damage. In fact, taking so much damage, I wonder if it's these guys that's doing it. The Blackshot Dragon Slayers. Yeah, I mean, they can take their pick down there of targets. The amount of ammunition they have is kind of limited, I suppose. Not as much as, say, the Numenorian steel bows from Numenor, but Lake Town pikemen. I mean, 95 of them remain there. Still some more reinforcements they can use. Not much, though. And much of what they can reinforce with now is going to be out of ammo basic archers, which is all well and good. I mean, the Dalian archers are designed to be pretty decent at that sort of thing, but I don't know. Not yet ready to move forward here either. Jefferson moving forward with some strong crossbowmen. 19 of them. I mean, this will elicit probably some sort of response. Could be that the Arathirim try to catch them out. This will do damage as well. Crossbow bolts from the front, even though the shielded infantry is out in front. The crossbow is going to be a much better option. And the Arathirim will move forward. And Snaga skirmishers are there, 5 of them. They will rout instantaneously when the Arathirim touch them. But they will... Actually, no, they don't rout instantaneously, which is somewhat of a surprise. Now they do. Surely the Eastron crossmen will go the same sort of way. The Scion Rim do have the opportunity to get in here and try and do some damage to the Arathirim, who are forced into retreating, killing off just a couple of crossbows. But it all does add up. The Arathirim have been certainly a good addition. Meanwhile, is this attack still persisting? Dwarven miners are back for another go, and once again they are being dealt with by the elves. It's a little bit more like it though. I mean, the Hiri line at this point are so depleted that a unit of healthy 3rd Legion infantry will be far too much for them to deal with. But they do have a unit of Black Swan renegades on the way, which will muddy the waters somewhat. Armour-piercing maceman. Not what the dwarves will be all that thrilled to see. There's also more Dol Amroth resistance in the shape of the Belfalas Marines. More arrow fire. Some out of ammunition Balkoth tribesmen. As well as some Snaga skirmishers in here trying to help out where they can. The Dalian Royal Guard have also been committed, trying to squeeze around the side, but unsuccessfully the 4th Legion Shield Guard. They rout in the attempt. And also there go the Uruk-hai pikemen. So I mean, the Dalian phalanx at this point is fairly heavily damaged. Javelin fire starting to take its toll on them, but Still the defensive position stands, and still the attackers are taking an awful lot of damage trying to force their way through this junction, as we often see on this map. I mean, this map does have a tendency to work out in exactly this way. It's just who ends up being victorious, which can flick back and forth a bit. But this is always an incredibly violent part of the map. Corsair Blackguards taking damage from the Belfast Marines, who in turn are taking damage from them and the Snaga Skirmishers. Woodland Protectors moving forward. Belfast Marines inflicting yet more damage. Still a lot of ammunition from various sources just flying back and forth. Speaking of which, another unit of Belfast Marines is over here, taking hits from the Nar Rim. I'll be hoping their shields can continue to do the business. Scion Rim ducking back behind cover. And now it's turned into a case of who can utilise their ammunition more wisely. With a whole extra army, the attackers do have more margin for error with that sort of thing. Will it be enough though? And still this front line holds. Hiri Lang are there. Woodland Protectors crunching in from the sides, which will be enough to finish off this unit of ever more depleted Corsair Blackguards. High pikemen, forward come the hammers. I mean, the hammers of Gundabad, at the very least, they're not going to rout from this front line. They are locked morale, so they will have to be dealt with fully in melee, which is easier said than done, especially considering the kind of damage that they can chuck out. Ardenheim Shield Guard also very, very high morale. I don't think it's locked morale, but it's near as makes no difference. They're of course a very defensive unit, so they will keep that attack going for even longer, but seeing that kind of unit committed is a sign perhaps that the attackers are having to commit some of their more elite units. You can see that Thanatos still has some elites back here. Umbar still has a decent number of units sequestered away as well. Perhaps this will turn into more of an Umbar focused late game, because I don't see an awful lot of Isengard left. They may very well be on their last legs. What Uruk-hai pikemen they have left are moving forward. This sort of quality though has to be answered by something. Otherwise the attackers will finally manage to break their way through here. Greenwood Rangers are going to try and get into position. This will be a good opportunity to utilise the body-piercing projectiles. All kinds of Khazad trying to return fire into the firing lines that still occupy that cliff top. Still over here it's Rhun making the attempt at wearing the enemy down, but they're shooting way over the buildings. The amount of damage they're going to be able to do with that is very, very limited. Like, they may get the odd kill or two, but it's ultimately not going to be all that effective. You'd be better off just shooting dead into the front of these units, because at least most of your arrows would then be hitting. Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen. Are they going to try and wear down the Dolof Amroth infantry with some armor-piercing projectiles? The Arathirin moving off to the other side. What are they going to go after, I wonder? I'm just going to go after this unit of men-at-arms. Not a huge amount of damage there, was it? That will be a little bit more effective, surely. There's still some Barding Herd over here. One of the stalwarts of this battle so far. Narin getting a little bit closer. Arathirim trying to take their chance over here again to get some more charges in. They do need to be careful, because if they get caught in a prolonged melee with something as deadly as the Hammers of Gundabad, that will be the end of the Dol Amroth Lancers. Not the best charge, but it does connect at the very least. Mostly with the tattered remnants of that one unit of 3rd Legion, which to be fair, they could be routed. Uruk-hai pikemen forming up a good part of that front line. The Ardenheim Shield Guard are kind of isolated against Alien Royal Guard and Phalanx units, so they're actually not going to do all that well. Not as unified an assault as I was thinking it might have been initially. Lancers down. Again, not the cleanest of charges, but they are continuing to do decent little bits of damage here, the Arathirin. They are also now starting to take arrow fire. The Lurtz hunting pack, a body piercing archer for the attackers. else they'll probably want to try and deal with sooner rather than later, the defenders. It's the thing, the attackers always seem to have more that they can pull forward even when they are continually taking a lot of damage. Another unit of Lake Town infantry. Defenders not yet ready to abandon their posts over here. We've still 42 of them remain. They've been in the firing line for quite a while, and also having to get into melee, so it's been a long battle for them so far. Lake Town infantry shooting at point blank, but I mean they're getting hit. They won't mind too much actually that the Lufthansa back are using ammunition on a unit of archers as basic as the Lake Town ones, I think. But they're going to get demolished in melee by Sons of the Fallen and Hammers of Gundabad. They're not going to last very long whatsoever. The Arathirium somewhat depleted. Knights of the Silver Swan moving forward. I mean, they're a good supporting tool, but if they find themselves isolated against this level of Dwarven opposition, which they're not actually going to be isolated. The Elves do come forward with some Hiriauth to engage with the Hammers of Gundabad. Lake Town infantry continue to fight. Keldon River Patrol offering their support on the front line as well, so this will be a rather interesting fight, I think. Nar Rim being committed as the first wave in melee. The Scion Rim will come to reinforce them, which is for the best, because the Nar Rim will not be victorious against a unit of genuine infantry like the Men-at-Arms, but the Scion Rim are high quality enough that they will outlast the Dol Amroth fighters. Tirithea marksman firing downhill. What else do we have? Greenwood Rangers in a really good position. So they didn't dump all their ammunition earlier on like I feared they might, which is, at this point, that may be a very key decision from earlier on in the battle, because this could be the sort of thing which leads the defenders to go on to win this battle, honestly. If they can hit their right targets. Balakith Shieldbearers trying to push their way through. I mean, unit of arm-piercing maceman. Keldon River Patrol throwing their javelins. Surely they're going to rout under this sort of pressure. I'm really surprised they didn't, honestly. Doesn't really matter though, because at this point they're so depleted. Whatever they intended on accomplishing, they will not be able to. Dragon's Wrath crossbow though, in good position. Finally will they be able to break up that front line. The Bardian marksman, the Lake Town pikemen are wavering. Can they finally dismantle this defence, which has been so effective? You can see the bolts that have the straight arc ripping through that front line and doing a really good job of it as well. Hammers of Gundabad not doing so well against the Hiriauth in melee. Could be as well that there's a good amount of support coming in from other sources. And the Knights of the Silver Swan not alone in this fight. The Tirithea marksmen join them. Another unit of Hammers of Gundabad though. I don't know if the Knights of the Silver Swan are going to have the durability to withstand that sort of thing, but they have at least played their part. Such a violent battle so far over here. We've learned something about getting demolished there by the Blackshot Dragon Slayers, not wanting to take their chances with that body piercing any longer. Unit of Athalon Men-at-Arms out in front, acting as a bit of a lightning rod perhaps to bunch the enemy up, although those Tirithea marksmen, I think they are shooting more at the Eastron crossbows that are in behind. I mean, at this point I'd be worried for the attackers because they're taking continuous, fairly heavy damage from all engagements really. Do they really have the manpower to keep this up? I don't know. We shall wait and see. Lake Town infantry. It's not the easiest shot in the world for these Tirithea marksmen to make, but they should at least hit some sort of enemy. And their services may be required in melee as well. Another unit, well, this unit of Belfast Marines firing in. Front lines of the defenders coming under some pretty serious pressure at this point. Another unit of Dalian Bowmen being committed forward. Hammers of Gundabad surely too strong for the kinds of units that they're having to go up against now. Meanwhile, in the backfield, Keldon River Patrol and Hiriauth should be enough to finish off this unit of isolated Balakith Axguard, but the rest of the front lines Nara and Aru Sentinels and Ardenheim Shield Guard finally going to be enough to bring down that Dalian defence. This unit of Hirialth was doing quite well in an isolated engagement with the Hammers of Gundabad. Now though, with Orc Hunters and Balakathak's Guard coming to the aid of the Dwarves, the Hirialth will be conquered. And the defenders will have to rethink their front lines, I think, because they are finally being forced back from that position whether they like it or not. Lake Town Pikemen getting into position. Intent on remaining in place over here, primarily Dol Amroth front line. The Athalon Halberdiers will be very useful against something like the Scion Rhun. Chanting in the background still from the other runic units. The unit of Keldon River Patrol is still the Wanderers of Nimrodel, which can be utilised to good effect. Lake Town Infantry in place. Basic arrow fire though it may be, as long as they don't get too much in the way of friendly fire from their questionable accuracy, that sort of damage will still be extremely appreciated, I'm sure. Just about arrow through now. 9 of them. Warns of Amon Lank, poison arrows. I mean, at this stage in proceedings, with how many of the units over here are elite Dwarves and Black Numenorians, routing the enemy is going to be pretty hard, but any basic units that do remain may be under threat from the Mirkwood poison arrows. That's not perhaps they have much left. They commit forward 3rd Legion Infantry. I think their bodyguard unit as well, which was guards at Khazad, which is now substantial as well, so guards of Khazad rushing forwards. So we will get to see the back of the map utilising some capacity. Of course, once upon a time we did see a battle end in here, because you can take shelter inside this little building over here. It is pretty much the final, one of the final stands that you can utilise, although we may actually get to see finally the very top of the hill utilised. The battle has never lasted long enough to really get up to that point. Maybe it will this time. Rhun meanwhile trying to force the issue. A few Umbar elements in there as well, starting to see the Carmul's units as well. Much more aggressively minded group of infantry. The armour piercing will be useful if they can get through that phalanx. The Thala Rangers going to get into position. A few runic warriors managing to get in behind enemy lines, but I mean, the River Patrol may not be a very good melee unit, but there's far too many of them here. The Thala Rangers still have ammunition, that could be very handy. Well, Nara and Iris Sentinels moving over here. Belfast Marines, very depleted. They will go down swinging there. Uruk-hai crossbowmen. I completely forgot about Isengard bringing their own crossbows, Nazkai as well. So this is where we'll see the most elite of the attacking units thrown in to see if they can finally break the defenders' resolve. Of course, our Blackguards taking up position over there. I think we are near enough now into the final 10,000 frames, what will be the decisive moments in the battle. And I mean, the attackers are down. The attackers are down by 9%, but that is... you can make that up as the attackers in this situation, I think. In transitional phases especially, if you can hit the enemy in the side, for example, like they may very well end up doing here if the defenders are not careful, that could be a really decisive moment. If the defenders are not awake and alert to this, they need to get a force over here to stop Isengard's advance, or at least get something in the way of it. Something else which is a real shame is the fact that these Athala Rangers are being engaged in melee and they're not doing so well against the Carmel's Shadow Guard. Yeah, I think they see the danger, because Dale at the very least is pulling back. Dol Amroth should try and do the same with what they can, especially with something like the Haven Guard. That's not the sort of thing you can afford to lose willy-nilly. Still that unit of Lake Town Infantry doing some decent damage. Corsair Crossbowmen as well, another useful supporting tool. Carmel's Chosen, so the finest that Rhun have to offer, also still alive and will also be crashing down upon the defences later. So we are going to see the top of the hill used. This is probably the first time on Mirlond where I've seen this section of the map genuinely look like it's going to be utilised for part of the battle. very rare. Like usually when you're the attackers, you just have to sort of accept the fact that this position up here for the archers is something you'll never see. You'll either win the battle before you get there, or you'll lose it. Now, sensational scenes. Orc hunters alone. Greenwood Rangers are going to try and deal with them, get a quick kill on these units. I mean, the Greenwood Rangers should be able to do so. Numerically superior, but I don't think they're going to be able to do so before the Hounds of Gundabad arrive on scene, and then the battle will almost certainly turn against them. Arathirim perhaps with an opportunity to charge into some of the advancing forces. Castamir's Rangers. That will be a worthy target surely for the Arathirim. They're going to get their lances down against the Nazkai. I mean, to do so is incredibly dangerous, because as soon as the Nazkai start swinging their swords, they're going to start to bring the Arathirim down. But you need to try and get some charges here while you can, because this is going to be the last opportunity as the defenders to use that cavalry for anything remotely useful. Tirathair marksman rout. This front line is dismantled now. Lake Town infantry shaken. Nara and Iru Sentinels once again forming up the first unit into the breach. Yeah, there's a little bit more room over here perhaps for the Arathirim to do their thing. What is happening with... yeah, as I feared for the Greenwood Rangers, they are not going to be enough to deal with Hammers of Gundabad. Amroth Lank are going to retreat. Well, I mean, they've got a good opportunity here to get themselves ready and in position. The defenders, what do they have left? Kyriak, good unit to have on the front line. Is it going to be enough considering some of the elite units that are still at the attacker's disposal? We shall wait and see. I think the main problem here is going to be, I think the attackers have still got enough ammunition to simply shoot at the defenders from where they are, with stuff like rangers and crossbows. And that's going to be pretty bad for them. They're going to have to get behind some sort of cover. There is a little bit of cover offered by the terrain. One's man on rank scurrying downhill. I mean, as much as sending forward a single unit like this maybe isn't the best of ideas, I don't think they have too much of a choice. Because, like I said, attacking crossbows, Keldon River Patrol, throwing their javelins into the Nara and Iru Sentinels, that one unit of ones of Amon Lank doing their best. I mean, they have somewhat connected with the Uruk-hai crossbowmen, but most of that charge honestly was intercepted by the Scion Rhun. Yeah, and at this point, if you're the defenders, you may as well, instead of allowing yourself to get shot up, you may as well just go all in. Nice opportunity for a rear charge here from the Arathirim, and the Carmel's Chosen will be a little bit less. If I say that, most of the Arathirim actually died when the Carmel's Chosen intercepted that charge. It's a sign of how wounded they are, I suppose. Hiriak moving forward, there's still some Barding Herd, still some Palace Guard and Haven Guard, so the most elite units that the defenders have had are still all here. Still doing their best to get as many kills as they possibly can, the Arathirim. Lancers down. Running through here. If this was Mountain Blade, you'd probably have a good opportunity to still win this battle if you were to play a character mounted on a horse with the best gear. But we are not in such a world. Lake Town Pikemen getting in position, still having access to these daily and phalanx units which have been so effective so far in this battle could be important, but again, you can see the clear projectiles. And yeah, if the Castamir's Rangers get a hold of stuff like the Lake Town Pikemen, it clearly isn't going to go too well for the defensive line. Pretty wide defensive line as well. Alcaron Dust Legion. I mean, over here, Dol Amroth, the dwarves actually need to kind of get a move on, get into the fray. Also have Blackguards moving in. Whatever happened to the Dwarven General? They're getting there. I don't know if they're going to be, or when they arrive, will the battle already have been decided? Perhaps? Lake Town infantry being dealt with by the hammers of Gundabad. Still some defending ranges as well as a unit of Hiriauth doing their best to... Elven King Palace Guard, I mean they are getting in behind the Karma's Chosen, so as with the other engagements in this battle so far, it has been quite a violent one. Lake Town Pikemen defeat, victory, who knows? Is that 9% lead the defenders had going to be enough to allow them to win the battle in the long run? Blackshot Dragon Slayers on the front line. Still Nars Kai over here as well though, which is a bit of a problem. Elven King's Palace Guard. They need to try and finish off this before the entirety of the Northern Army arrives at the very least. Still that Guards of Khazad units, still the Arathirim. I mean, charging into the Hammers of Gundabad is kind of pointless because at this point that cavalry charging can still be used to rout units, and of course you can't do that with the Hammers of Gundabad. Runic General gone. Flag Rim might rout. Scion Rim wavering. Good opportunity here. And the Scion Rim do rout. Flag Rim that are fighting on the front line are also shaken up. Could it be that having that 9% lead and having that slightly disjointed assault, and everything about the attackers has been slightly disjointed in this battle so far. They may still win, but as a result, they may also be the reason why they ultimately lose. We'll have to wait and see. Corsair Blackguards, Hiriauth trying to dance back and forth between those. The Thala Rangers still have some ammunition. Pushing downhill the Lake Town Pikemen. There's still the Nars Kai doing their thing. Getting in behind enemy lines to try and deal with the crossbowmen of the Hiriak. And I don't know, it is all a bit disjointed. Most of what is left in terms of the centre of their defence is phalanx units, halberdiers specifically. Mostly, you'd have to say, the Athalon ones at this stage. Barding Herd are somewhat numerous, but they need to make sure that those halberdiers are pointed in the right direction. Once again, trying to silence the ranged units. Palace Guard is still a really significant unit to have left alive at this stage, as are the dismounted Knights of Silver Swan, just because they won't go down easily. I would assume that's Rhun. Rhun completely gone. Dol Amroth pushing downhill with all of that armour piercing and numbers. That will be enough to finish off the Naru Naaru Royal Guard. The Palace Guard still have the opportunity of getting behind enemy lines, and they're going after the Black Guards, trying to deny the attackers as many of their skirmishes as they can before then getting down to business in melee. I mean, the dismounted Knights of Silver Swan will be dealt with by the armour piercing of both the Hammers of Gundabad, and especially, of course, the mighty Guards of Khazad, which, considering they were completely unharmed until just a moment ago, are probably the single healthiest elite unit on the field, which is another potentially good sign for the attackers. They are going to be leaning quite heavily on the dwarves here, actually, as the game enters its crescendo. The Nars Kai are still alive, but Wardens of Amon Lank and Lake Town Pikemen keeping them arm's length. A little bit of Isengard left. The fact that it is Nars Kai makes it a significant factor. Casimir's Rangers, only 7 of them remain. Uruk-hai crossbows being engaged, but I don't know how long those Hiriak are going to last for. It's a very close ending to this game. I think a large part of it is going to have to come down to whether or not any of these ranged units can be utilised effectively, and how useful those phalanx units are going to be. The Palace Guard have done a really good job against these Black Guards, but I think considering the wounds they've already sustained, excuse me, I think the Guards of Khazad are going to have more than enough to finish off the Palace Guard at this point. And without the Palace Guard, I don't know whether the quality proposition quite stacks up. The Naru Naaru units, I think, are locked morale, which is proving to be a bit of a problem because they need to kill the entirety of this unit off before this clutch of halberdiers can move on. They still have the Haven Guard as well, which I'd forgotten about, admittedly. They'll finish off the Hammers of Gundabad. Will that then be enough to finish off the Guards? Fine margins, this. Kyriet continuing to slowly mulch their way through Uruk-hai crossbowman. In the background over there we can see what remains of the Blackshot Dragon Slayers killing their way through some of the Corsair crossbows. Nazkai. And the Nazkai are going to win this little fight as well, so that's 24 of them, taking a fair amount of damage at this point. Another fairly healthy bunch of Hammers of Gundabad finishing off the last Wanderer of Nimrodel. 11 Athala Rangers. They're going to finish off those Corsair crossbows. Palace Guard. The Guards of Khazad are taking a few losses at this point, but the Palace Guard, not too many of them remain. This is going to be interesting though, because I don't know. If they don't have any ranged units, can they actually deal with all of these halberds, the attackers, if the halberds are pointing in the right direction? Now the Haven Guard will come to the aid of what remains of the Palace Guard. 15 of them, 34 Haven Guard. I don't know, because the problem is the armour piercing of the Guards of Khazad is still going to be so good against the Haven Guard, and the Haven Guard don't have the armour piercing damage to crack through the Guards of Khazad's armour in the same way that the Palace Guard do. So, as much as I'm sure it will be appreciated, I don't know if it will be enough. It certainly won't be enough with this bunch of units on the way as well. They need those halberds, and unfortunately I don't think they're going to get them, because the Uruk-hai crossbows are going to be on their way as well. Yeah, I think it's going to be an attacker victory, this. Corsair crossbow is going to win. Just not quite enough here, the defenders. 42 of them. Castamir's Rangers in a good position to offer what limited support they can. The Barding Herd. Athala Rangers going to try and do some damage as well, but yeah, it's not going to be enough, is it? The Barding Herd and the Athalon Halberdiers needed to stick together. I don't think it would have made a difference in the end anyway, but Athalon units shaken. The crossbow's trying to get in and amongst the formation. That's a good play from DF Mark. He knows what to do to try and not feed as many kills as possible into a unit such as this. Very close battle this though. Probably just like the last one, actually, it turned out to be one of the most entertaining we've seen on this map, because while it did initially work out in the same way that we would expect, the fact that we've seen this late game battle up here and the fact that it has turned out to be so close has really elevated this one beyond a standard Merlon siege. Dwarven General does fall, but you're not going to rout Guards of Khazad anyway. 3rd Legion Infantry, when they're in close proximity as well, are going to remain resolute. Oof. Headshotted. Dalian General falls. Still 2 Palace Guard remain. Where's Imrahil? There he is. Engaged with the Hammers of Gundabad, who are also still alive. Athala Rangers just trying to get as many kills as they possibly can, I suppose. Barding Herd in place to block the advance. I mean, they'll do some decent damage to these crossbows, I suppose, but if the Nazkai can get in and amongst their formation, that lamellar armour will not save them from such savage attacks. Corsair crossbows on the way, so Umbar still just about alive. I think that unit of Corsair crossbows is the only thing they have left. Surely this is going to be the end now. I mean, Imrahil is fleeing. Fleeing for the hills. What's he going to do? He is well and truly on his own at this point, on his lonesome. Are they going to duel with generals, I wonder? Because that's Castamir, isn't it? They are both heavily bloodied. I hope they allow this to happen, and I hope that the Dwarven player doesn't get in the way, because this would be really quite a lot of fun. Although I think that, I don't know, based on Thanatos' movements, I don't think he's going to allow such a thing to happen. Ooh. Sliced in the back. Well, I mean, he killed the... Technically, it didn't really matter, I suppose. Imrahil has bragging rights before he inevitably gets slaughtered in this battle. Chopped in the back was the Umbar General. Barding Herd doing their best. Most of the kills they'll get from this will probably be from Uruk-hai crossbows. Imrahil may end up perishing at the hands of Nazkai now. looking like it could. Well, there goes Imhill. And I imagine the Dalian units that are left are going to rout now. The Thala Rangers rout. So a unit of Barding Herd, rather fittingly I suppose, is the last unit of the defenders that remains. There goes Thranduil. 3% the difference, yeah, suitably close battle that was, and that may be actually better in the long run than the last Mirlond replay we saw. Even though the last one started off better and was more aggressive, ultimately the defenders in that one, if memory serves me correctly, ended up having nowhere near enough to get over the line, whereas this time they may have done just a few different choices here and there. When the battle is this close, really it is down to the finest margins. Anything that the defenders could have done that would have been maybe a little bit more efficient, a little bit better, could have led to them winning. And ultimately, like, again, the attackers, everything they did was just slightly out of kilter. Like, they weren't unified in really any of their assaults perfectly, and that nearly added up to them giving the defenders a way back into the game, considering, you know, it was what it was, I suppose. And a good defence, I suppose, from the defenders as well, especially that Dalian front line really proved itself to be a really efficient thing. Arathurian were well used. The rest of the Dol Amroth army maybe could have been slightly better used. That clutch of units that were committed forwards, and they lasted longer than they should have done, but they still weren't as efficient as they could have been. You know, that's something which maybe Dol Amroth could have, Diego Rio Ramos could have done a little bit differently. Mirkwood, again, it's hard to tell. I mean, when you're talking about stuff like that, like skirmish ammunition, was it used as efficiently as it could have been? Very hard to keep track of that sort of thing. But ultimately, the attackers just enough in the end to get over the line, pushing right up to the top of the hill for once in Merlon. This may be the one and only time we get to see this map utilised as maybe it should be. But yes, let's have a look and see what did the damage. For the Dwarven player, got the most kills of the attackers, which is not too surprising given the Dwarves are what they are. Hammers of Gundabad doing very, very well. Obviously their locked morale nature really helps them in situations that are a bit of a meat grinder like they were committed to initially. And even in the late game they were still contributing. Big armour piercing damage as well is always going to be helpful against factions like Dol Amroth and Dale. 4th Legion Shield Guard, a dependable frontline unit. The Guards of Khazad were only committed late on, really. It was only in the last stand area where we actually got to see them utilised. Orc Hunters as well, racking up decent little kill counts themselves, but nothing ridiculous from the Dwarves. It was still a fairly punishing experience for them, just as much as the 3 evil factions they were marching alongside today. So yeah, big thank you to Thanatos for sending me this battle replay, and big thank you to all of the players for being a part of it, and for not making it just a completely typical Mirlond siege. This map is slowly converting me as it works out in different ways. But yeah, interesting indeed. As for what's going to be coming up soon, I think that the next battle replay is going to be one from Silmarillion, and following on from that I believe I have one for the Cardland Outpost, so those will very likely be the next 2 that we see. Moving on from that, I'm actually recording a lot of these in bulk, like in serious bulk, in early December basically, and this will only come out I think in like mid-January sometime. And the reason for that is I'll be going home for Christmas, and I want I want a long list of replays that I've got basically uploaded and ready to go, so that I'm giving myself the best opportunity to continue this schedule as far into the year as I can, because doubtless at some point early next year I'll be sent away for maybe 3 weeks again, and I want to have at least that much saved up so that the channel can continue unhindered. I have managed to do that, but of course it does mean that in my backlog I now only have literally the 1 replay to record at this point, and that is the one on the Cardland Outpost, so I'll be doing that later on today. And that will be not the next one, because I've already recorded the Silmarillion one, which will be the next one, but the next one after that, which should take me up to just before the end of January, which is good enough margin for error before I come back from home for Christmas. And maybe then I'll be sent a couple more replays, which I can also add into the mix as well. We'll see. Irregardless of that, that is the plan, and naturally as well the stuff from the Christmas channel update still holds true as well. So hopefully by the time this one comes out we'll be getting a little bit closer to securing some new hardware, and with that we can hopefully start to do a few Rise of Mordor replays added in as well. But yeah, big thank you to Thanatos and all the players once again. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.